Picture this: two massive LPG tankers, Indian flagged, fully loaded, cutting through some of the most dangerous waters on the planet right now. The Strait of Hormuz, a choke point that Iran has been using as a pressure valve against the entire world. And yet, these two ships glide through. Not because Iran suddenly had a change of heart, not because the world community pressured Tehran into backing down, but because India played this situation in a way that very few countries could have pulled off. Quietly, precisely, and on its own terms. Let's break down exactly what happened, why it matters, and what this tells us about where India stands as a global power today. The Shipping Corporation of India operates two LPG tankers, the Shivalik and the Nanda Devi. These aren't small vessels. The Shivalik was carrying 40,000 metric tons of cargo, mostly LPG fuel, headed for Mundra port in Gujarat. The Nanda Devi followed close behind with 46,000 metric tons, bound for Kandla port, arriving on Tuesday. Both ships successfully crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Rajesh Kumar Sinha, Special Secretary at the Union Ministry of Shipping, publicly confirmed it. 24 Indian flag vessels were present in the Persian Gulf region at the time. Two of them, carrying critical energy cargo, made it through safely. That's not just a logistics update. That's a geopolitical statement. India just told the world that its ships will move, its energy will flow, and no one gets to stop that. Now here's the thing that the headlines don't fully capture. India didn't just send diplomats and hope for the best. Before any conversation happened, before any agreement was reportedly reached, the Indian Navy was already in position. Destroyers, frigates, fully armed warships deployed across the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf, not for show, but as a deliberate, calculated signal. India has the fourth most powerful navy in the world. More importantly, India is the dominant military power in the Arabian Sea. Nearly all of Iran's trade, the trade that keeps its economy breathing, passes through that very sea. So when India stations warships in that zone, Tehran doesn't need a translator. The message is understood perfectly. This is what military analysts call coercive diplomacy. You sit at the negotiation table, but your navy is right outside the door, and everyone in the room knows it. Now let's rewind to understand what triggered all of this. Iran has been targeting commercial shipping in the Gulf as part of its wider confrontation with the United States and Israel. But the attacks weren't precise. They weren't limited to American or Israeli interests. Just the week before the Shivalik made its crossing, Iranian forces struck the Maori, a commercial vessel carrying cargo bound for India. The ship was Thai-flagged, but the destination was Indian. The Oman Navy had to step in and rescue the crew. That attack crossed a clear line. It wasn't some distant geopolitical event. It was a direct hit on India's energy supply chain. And New Delhi responded the way serious powers respond. Not with press releases, not with strongly worded statements, with warships in the water. So why did Iran ultimately back off? Let's think about this rationally from Tehran's perspective. Iran is already under enormous pressure on multiple fronts. Its air defense capabilities have taken serious damage. Its proxy network, from Hamas in Gaza to Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen, is stretched and under fire. The absolute last thing Iran needs right now is a direct confrontation with a country that has both the naval muscle and the economic leverage to make Tehran's situation significantly worse. India isn't the United States. India isn't Israel. India is a country that Iran actually needs, as a trade partner, as a diplomatic back channel, and increasingly, as one of the few large economies still buying Iranian oil despite Western sanctions. Repeatedly attacking Indian shipping wasn't just strategically reckless for Iran. It was economically self-destructive. The Iranian ambassador himself summed it up: India is our friend. Now that quote landed a bit awkwardly considering Iranian forces had literally just attacked an India-bound ship days earlier. But the underlying message is real. Iran does not want India as an adversary, and that is precisely the leverage New Delhi used to negotiate. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has been deliberate and careful about how India frames this entire episode. He's not declaring a win. He's not holding a press conference with a trophy. His language has been measured and strategic. He said, "I am currently in talks with them, and we have achieved some results. This process is ongoing. These are still early days. We have many more ships there." Read that last line carefully. The Indian Navy isn't going anywhere until every Indian flagged vessel in that region is safe. That's not a diplomatic pleasantry. That's a standing threat dressed in polite language. Jaishankar also pushed back directly on the American interpretation of events. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright publicly claimed that Iran probably made a deal with India, suggesting India gave Tehran something in exchange for safe passage. Jaishankar flatly denied it. India gave Iran nothing. What happened was a product of the existing India-Iran relationship combined with the hard power reality sitting in the Arabian Sea. Prime Minister Modi had also personally spoken to Iranian President Pezeshkian, making New Delhi's position crystal clear. The safety of Indian nationals and the unhindered movement of Indian goods and energy are not negotiable. Full stop. Now let's zoom out and talk about why the Strait of Hormuz is not just strategically important for India, but genuinely existential. India imports roughly 90% of its crude oil requirements and about half of its natural gas needs. Nearly 40% of crude oil and 54% of LNG flows into India through the Gulf region and this single narrow strait. Qatar alone supplies more than half of India's LNG, gas that runs fertilizer plants, powers electricity grids, and fuels industrial production across the country. A prolonged Hormuz blockade isn't a market disruption. It's a direct attack on India's economic foundation. So far, India has stayed relatively insulated. The government diversified its import sources aggressively over the past few years. Russian oil purchases increased substantially after the Ukraine war. Current stockpiles are estimated to cover at least 25 days of national consumption. But the long-term numbers are sobering. If oil averages $100 a barrel through this conflict, rating agencies project India's current account deficit could expand to nearly 2.2% of GDP in the next financial year. At $200 a barrel, which Iran has openly threatened, the consequences become severe and far-reaching. And this is not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. There are millions of real people caught in the middle of this. The Gulf region is home to roughly 9 million Indians. The UAE alone has 3.5 million. Saudi Arabia has 2.7 million. Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain. Indians are embedded across every corner of the Gulf economy. These are workers, engineers, nurses, drivers, and families who send money home every month and whose physical safety depends directly on how stable this region remains. At least 3 Indian nationals have already lost their lives due to Iranian attacks on Gulf nations. The National Emergency Management Authority has been closely tracking the situation, and the Indian government has made it known to Tehran that civilian casualties involving Indian nationals will not be overlooked. The United States has called on the international community to send naval assets to the Persian Gulf to protect shipping lanes. Trump posted on Truth Social asking China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the UK to contribute warships to the effort. India was not mentioned, and honestly that tracks perfectly. Washington already knows New Delhi will not join an American-led military coalition against Iran. India's foreign policy is built entirely on the principle of strategic autonomy, the ability to engage every major power on its own terms without becoming anyone's junior partner. More importantly, India didn't need America's coalition. India had already secured its own shipping lanes, independently, without American command, without NATO frameworks, and without giving Iran a single concession. That is really what this episode is about at its core. India's growing confidence and capability as a power that handles its own interests without outsourcing its security to anyone else. The Indian Navy wasn't deployed as part of some multilateral peacekeeping effort. It was deployed for one reason, and one reason only: India's interests. And it delivered. So did diplomacy win here, or did the Navy? The honest answer is that neither works without the other. Jaishankar's phone calls land very differently when there are frigates positioned in the Gulf of Oman. Hard power backing smart diplomacy. That is the exact combination India deployed here. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Did India handle this the right way? Like the video and subscribe for more.